Welcome to the second, I believe, or is it the third in a Blue Investing Protecting Water at the Source series. And please do excuse my awful sounding voice. I seem to have come down with obviously something that's a little infectious. So we're going to run through a couple of housekeeping things and then get right on with our presentation. So there are things you can do to improve your reception. If you are running any software programs in the background that you don't need right now, go ahead and shut them down. If you start to notice any phasing, any juddering in the video or the audio, you can go ahead and shut down anything that might be taking away some of that bandwidth. If you're in a place where you're in public and the sound might be irritating to people around you, do use a USB headset. Obviously, if you can hear me, then the audio is working just fine. We aren't going to be showing any flash videos today, but if we were, we would have made those available to you in an MP4 version. Any of the screens that you see, any of these segregated little pods that you see, can be made full screen. And let me move this image here so you see what I'm talking about. In the top right corner of any of these images, you'll see this symbol. If you click on it, it will make that particular part of your screen full screen. To return to this layout, put your cursor in the same general area, and you will see those arrows pointing inwards, and that will bring you back to this screen. Obviously, if you're seeing the chat pod underneath here, there it is, then you will know that you can enter any comments, any questions as we go through in there. And the presenters will be keeping an eye on those, and we will be taking questions at the end of this session. So again, you can change the text size, you can change the color, but do remember, if you're watching this as a recording later, that chat pod won't be active. But you can copy everything that's in there. So if you put any links in there, I don't feel that you have to be writing them down. You can cut and paste and copy those. If you need to adjust your audio, there are two places to do that. First of all, within the room itself on the meeting, and then in your computer's own system. If you would like to ask a question in person later, if you have a microphone or you're calling in, we're going to ask you to hold that until the end of the session and raise your hand. You'll see that little symbol, the guy with his hand raised there, and that will let us know that you have a microphone and you'd like to ask your question in person. This is my contact information, and we will, of course, be having this on the screen at the end of the presentation as well. So we're going to go over to the actual presentation window. And you'll see there a poll that we're putting up, and we'd like to know if this is the first time you've heard about Craft3 and their Clean Water Loan program. So go ahead and put your answers in there while I do some legal stuff here. And I'm hoping I make this through it without getting into a coughing fit. But we are a public outreach and consulting organization. You'll see my image over here. This is me. And the reason I like to use that photograph is that's taken on the shores of Lake Superior. At that time of year, which was almost the beginning of November, Lake Superior should have been going into its coldest phase. We should have been sitting there with big heavy jackets, big heavy boots, but you'll see that we're not. Because on that particular day it was 68 degrees, which is not normal, and obviously is causing some weather and climate-related issues around what is one of the largest bodies of fresh water in the world. So we are dedicated to the advocacy for the protection of water as a vital human and an ecological asset through the implementation of management of affordable, appropriate wastewater systems. We are national and international. And basically, we host and facilitate these type of events to make this kind of information more publicly available. We don't make or affect any change if all we do is talk to each other. We need to create a climate of informed consent amongst the general public. We're independent. We help communities find their own path forward because, as our motto says, water is water, not waste. So the disclaimer is that we host these presentations, we make them publicly available, but this should not be construed as an endorsement or paid advertising by our organization. We are committed to making these events available to those with hearing, sight, or other disabilities, and those for whom English is not your primary language. So once this event has been posted to YouTube, which it will be here probably by the end of the week, you will be able to read the transcript, and there will also be closed captioning available. So let me put this away. And we do like this photo because it kind of sums up exactly what's going on as far as where most people live. They live in small rural communities. They live in small developments. Many of them, like my own house, was actually moved here in the 1880s. So I see that there. Let's end the poll and broadcast the results. We might bring this back later so that people can get an idea of what the answers were. So at this point, we're going to minimize this and move it out of the way. And I'm going to hand this over to, put this over there. And again, remember, look for that symbol in the top right corner. If you want to see these slides full screen, go ahead and click that. Today we're going to be hearing from 4 people who are actively involved in this program. Carl and Desiree from Craft3, Jeff Najali, who is the Financial Management Section Manager, Department of Ecology, the Water Quality Program at Washington State, and Gary Porter, who's the Program Coordinator of Onsite Sewage and Well Permitting Program at Tacoma-Pierce. So I'm going to mute my microphone. Take it away, Desiree.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you all are at. We are excited to be here and share information about a program that we have all been working on for some time and to answer any questions that you all have about it. The presentation is about a regional program and a regional approach that multiple agencies, nonprofit and governmental, have come together to solve water quality problems in Washington State. And we'll go through it in just a moment. And really quick, I'll introduce myself, Desiree Sidoroff. I'm with Craft3. We are a community development financial institution, nonprofit. So we are not a bank, but we are a lender. And we don't have our own capital. We pull together capital from a number of different sources. And we do business loans, consumer loans, and a whole wide variety of other loans. And our mission is a triple bottom line mission. And we want all of our investments to have an environmental and a social equity and an economic outcome. And that is why we are here today and why we are here part of this program. I'll introduce you. We'll start off by Jeff will give some background about the context and about how we got to a point where we needed a program. I'll talk a little bit about the loans, and Gary will share his perspective from a local health department. And I'll advance the slides.
Okay, thank you, Desiree, and thanks everyone. Glad to be part of this program that's finding a lot of success, and we'll hear more about that from Desiree later. Just starting off by framing the problem, which I'm sure everybody can appreciate that's involved in issues around on-site septic systems nationwide, but in Washington State, septics pose a significant issue with those systems that are either failing, weren't installed properly to begin with, or are not functioning not functioning properly, and contributing to pollution issues statewide. The focus here on this slide is with the Puget Sound, which is the second largest estuary in the United States, a huge area encompassing the highest population density in the state. There's been over 2,000 listings for bacteria issues in the Puget Sound area, and almost 20% of shellfish growing beds, which is a huge industry in Washington State, a huge economic base, as well as a recreational component. 19% of those shellfish growing beds are closed due to fecal coliform bacteria contamination, and 15% of marine swimming beaches don't meet criteria over the past 10 years. So these are issues that Washington State Department of Ecology has been working around and within in coordination with Department of Health for a long time. And on-site septic systems are one of the factors, not the only factor, but one of the factors that contribute to this problem. And that's one of the reasons we at the Department of Ecology have been addressing on-site septics for a fairly long time, and I'll get to kind of the history of the financial assistance programs for water quality in a couple slides. But this is not just a Puget Sound problem. That was one of the points I wanted to make. This is a statewide issue, and we'll talk more about kind of how this program may expand in the future. But the Puget Sound estuary is of critical importance to the state and for environmental protection and improvement. Next slide. Thank you. So in terms of number of systems, estimated failures, and the cost of fixing systems, 1/3 of households in Washington State are on on-site septic systems. Again, a lot of rural communities and areas outside of urban and within urban growth boundaries within the state and within communities. There's about 1 million on-site septic systems statewide, 600,000 of those in Puget Sound area. EPA estimates that 5% failure rate on average of on-site septic systems, which means 50,000 failing systems statewide, 30,000 in Puget Sound. Obviously, these are estimates, but looking at that, and if you had an average $15,000 to replace a septic system, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in need across the state and within Puget Sound. So it's a significant issue, and fixing a failing on-site septic system is a costly endeavor for any homeowner, and it's especially challenging for those on low or fixed incomes, which in a lot of our rural areas and areas around the Puget Sound, that's a significant issue for folks to spend $15,000 plus. Some of the systems that are closer to water bodies are even more expensive. We've seen costs up exceeding $25,000 for some systems, so definitely a significant issue statewide. So the next slide gives a diagram that shows kind of an outline of our funding program, our combined water quality funding program, which runs on an annual cycle. We take applications from communities every year. Our funding is focused on public entities that are eligible to apply for funding. And we're funding from multiple sources of funding, federal and state. You can see to the left there fund sources, including the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program, which is a combination of federal and state dollars. Centennial Clean Water Program is a state grant program. Section 319 is a federal grant program addressing non-point source pollution issues, which on-site septic failures would be included in that. And then stormwater financial assistance program. So we run an integrated program where we take one application from public entities and also nonprofits for the 319 funding in an annual cycle that's competitively rated and ranked applications to fund projects across a wide range of project types, including wastewater, non-point source projects, stormwater projects, and on-site sewage repair and replacement, and projects that are more study and evaluate and improve on-site sewage system management. And so every January, we issue a draft offer list, a combined funding offer list, and award funding we have to projects on that integrated priority list. So rating criteria are strongly focused on water quality benefit of projects, and on-site septic programs have rated kind of in various areas across our, over time across our rating system, and generally rate well on water quality objectives and outcomes for the cost incurred. And we can move to the next slide. So I mentioned that Ecology has a long history of funding on-site septic programs, mostly to county health jurisdictions around the Puget Sound area. And those had been, since the mid-90s, we had been funding some counties for doing a local loan program where we provide funds to the county government, usually a health jurisdiction, and that county then provides loans to individual homeowners. We, as a state program, don't provide direct loans to homeowners, so that's not something that we can take on as a state program, but we've developed a program called the Local Loan Program where the individual applicants can provide micro loans from a loan we provide to counties. That program was focused on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan program, so it was funds as all loans. In the mid-2000s, we did an evaluation, met with the counties that were doing programs, those that had and stopped doing programs under this local loan program, and identified challenges and barriers to the success of the programs that were going on. One of the big obstacles was risk of default. Some counties had too many defaults and thought the risk was too high and stopped using the program. And if it's all loan money, they still have to pay it all back, so that created an issue there. Also, local health jurisdictions aren't lending organizations, and being a lender was onerous for a lot of the counties to take on. They did not want to take on the risks and staffing support for administration of programs. And a lot of homeowners needed access to perhaps hardship funding, not just loan, but grant funding that would help offset for those really low income folks that were hard to get to with a loan program, solely loan program. So we included grants in our eligibility rule so that loans and grants together could be used to help fund these local loan programs, and to essentially address the risk by having a loan loss program covering the cost for administration of the program, and then addressing hardship grants to residents that met certain criteria. At the same time, there was a lot of push to not have a program that was split up amongst a lot of different counties that were running their programs in many different ways. Everybody was doing this program differently, using different criteria, processes, and it was labor intensive, and again, that admin piece was still pretty significant, and the risk was still significant for counties. And they asked there was requests for a regional program at that point. So next slide. So over time, and starting with, on this slide, you can see that Craft3 had been doing on-site septic loans with Pacific County as early as 2002. In 2007, the state legislature, I think through input from the Craft3 organization, provided a proviso that helped us fund and capitalize a small-scale regional program for the Hood Canal area of Puget Sound that was experiencing some significant issues with oxygen depletion in the South Hood Canal area. And septics were identified as one of the key issues there. So the state put up some funding, that Craft3 put up some private funds that created that first kind of small regional loan program with 3 counties in the Puget Sound area. And then there was ongoing requests for other counties to get involved in that regional system. And a work or task force was created through a National Estuary Program grant, again focused on Puget Sound area. But this advisory group worked on addressing on-site septic management issues and financial assistance issues for addressing the repair and replacement of failing systems. And the recommendation from that I think it was a year-long process. Desiree can help correct me if I'm wrong, but the recommendation out of that was that a regional approach would be the best option to allow counties to access into a regional loan program, financial assistance program that can help residents, help the county manage on-site septics and identify failures and have a place where residents can go to get inexpensive financing and options for financing so that repairs and replacements were done more proactively.
And I'll jump in here just for a minute. This is Desiree. Some of the other issues, so we used to get calls all the time from places that couldn't offer the loan, and the counties had lots of other issues being able to join or to access loans, whether it was their internal infrastructure, they just couldn't handle taking on a loan program, even applying for funds and then contracting out with a lender. And so, and also when the loans were different on a county by county basis, the contractors would get very confused, and it was challenging for everybody in the ecosystem to operate with multiple programs. And so that's another one of the reasons why the regional approach was recommended from that task force.
Yeah, and it was much more complicated for us as Ecology to be managing these multiple small programs under different, with different processes and procedures, and providing funding individually and as a pass-through, and some were already contracting with Craft3, as Desiree said, and so part of it was looking for a more direct approach to reduce the administrative burden for both the state and local entities, and for Craft3 to do the business that was being done. And there was really good success out of the Hood Canal model project, although it still was being passed through Kitsap County as kind of the lead entity there. And we still have some of that with the regional program, but a far better scenario moving forward. So after that recommendation, or during the recommendation from the task force advisory group, I had started talking with our Assistant Attorney General about our program, how we could devise a system that could be established at a regional level and still meet our existing funding program structure and our authorities for doing business and providing financial assistance to public entities, essentially. So we ended up finding a pathway forward, which was for a group of counties to apply for financial assistance to establish a regional loan program through our competitive process. So this all went through our normal competitive rating and ranking process and for award of funds. And in 2015, Tacoma-Pierce County Health, in conjunction with Department of Health and input from Ecology and other counties, I think there were 10 counties or 11 at that time, applied for funding as a group to establish this regional loan program. Puget Sound and coastal counties included. And that project was awarded funds of approximately $8 million in state revolving fund loan, low interest loan, and about $1 million plus or minus in Centennial Grant and forgivable principal loan in combination. So that set the stage for moving forward. It took another, and Desiree, you can jump in. I forget how long it took us to go. We went out for a competitive award of the contract that Ecology oversees to essentially award the funds to a private entity that can do the lending. And Craft3 was the selected entity to do the lending for this regional program, but it was through a competitive bid process. And then developing the contract with Craft3 took another 9-10 months, perhaps, to get that in place, again, with legal folks involved to make sure everything was legally defensible and outcomes were established, and benefits as well. There were some questions that came up about our state constitution and the benefit to the public for funds expended in this program and the counties.
Yeah, we launched it. I know we were awarded the contract sometime in April of 2016. It was a short RFP process. So it was probably mid-April that we were awarded the contract, and then we began lending June 15th. So because Craft3 had a product and a program already basically ready to go, we were able to launch and offer loans on day one. There wasn't a develop the program timeline that you would normally expect if there wasn't a lender that already had experience in the area. So in some counties it looked seamless. It was just about different funding sources being used, like HITSAP. And then in other counties, we did a startup process and started offering loans on day one, but then went through a training and outreach process with those counties. And I could talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's great. And Tacoma-Pierce County put in another application for the group. I think we're requesting to add another 3 this last year. Actually, in our current funding list, there's at least draft list is proposed to fund, add additional funds. I think of about the same amount, another $9 million, a combination of grant and loan funding. And that's based on the stream of funding use, the number of loans being made by Craft3 through this, which Desiree will get into a little bit later in the presentation. But definitely a huge success so far in moving this forward. And I'm going to hand it over to Desiree at this point, and she'll kind of talk about the structure of the regional loan program and how that's working. And I'll just point out one other thing that I think is fantastic about this program is it's such a great collaborative partnership with a large number of counties, with Craft3 as the nonprofit lender in the picture, and with Department of Health, Department of Ecology collaborating and coordinating on addressing the issue and helping residents address this issue and be more responsible stewards of their own infrastructure on the wastewater side. So I'll hand it over to you, Des.
Okay, great. And this slide is an attempt to demonstrate how the structure of the program works. And the intention was to take all the hard work that's happened over the last 10 years in getting to a regional program and to make it easy and seamless for new agencies and counties to join moving forward. And so this structure is one that is scalable and has some backbones that will last quite a while. So there's a set of loan guidelines and a MOU between all the different counties that are involved, and they are called the partners. Each funding cycle, one of the counties steps up to be the lead agency, which is the applicant to Ecology for funds. And it's been Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department for 2 cycles, and then moving forward, it's going to be Clark County for the next cycle. And then as a group, those counties elect or request Ecology to be the fund administrator, and that keeps all the counties in an ownership role, but it streamlines the day-to-day fund administration, and the money just goes back and forth between Ecology and the selected lender, which right now is just Craft3. And we have a contract, we do regular reporting, and we have agreements on managing all the various federal and state compliance related to the funding sources. And then as a lender, we have our own set of federal and state compliance related to consumer lending. And then the roles real quick, I'll go through this. Ecology's role is to monitor the MOU and the guidelines and manage the contract with Craft3 and to manage the payments and then eventually the repayments. Department of Health plays a role too with the MOU and the guidelines and a leadership role in this effort. And they do a lot of the partner coordination. Each local health jurisdiction provides mostly their normal work that they do in their local counties, where they provide referrals to Craft3, they do their permitting and their other normal regulatory work, and then they serve as an advisory capacity for this effort. And Craft3 does all of the loan origination and servicing. We maintain all of our licensing, and we track and report on outcomes and funding sources. We play a lead role in the outreach and the marketing, but we don't do it alone. And eventually we will repay the loan back to Ecology. The 2 groups that are not on the slide that are involved in the process are the contractors and the homeowners. The homeowners are responsible for selecting their contractor and for managing all of the work with the contractor. The counties do not manage the contractors. And because this is a loan to a homeowner to manage the homeowner's process, it's not a grant of state or federal funds to that homeowner. That's how we manage Davis-Bacon and state prevailing wage issues. I think probably Jeff could answer, and if you have questions about that later, but the homeowner is really in charge of their loan, and it becomes their money, and they manage their own projects. 3 bids are not required, and they're always recommended to have multiple bids for anyone doing construction work, but we don't have requirements around that. So some of the benefits of the program are obvious public health and water quality improvements by being able to serve a range of people that wouldn't otherwise be able to access financing to fix their systems. There are a lot more people that are now able to stay in their homes that weren't able to. And then local health agencies don't have to spend a lot of time and resources on really expensive red tagging people's houses and going through regulatory compliance work or figuring out how to be lenders. They could focus on health and water quality concerns. And at Ecology, instead of managing upwards of 10 grants, they can move that into one grant that they manage, and it reduces redundancy in staff time and resources, and they could have one highly performing program as opposed to multiple programs that are all a little bit different. The challenges of the program are ongoing loan fund capitalization. There is a large demand for loans, and that demand continues on. And so finding ongoing sources of capitalization for this program is an ongoing challenge. The Ecology cycle has been great, the funding cycle. There is a need for both grant and loan dollars for the way that Craft3 delivers the loans, and I'll talk about that in a second. But to find ongoing sources of grants or revolving loan funds is tough. And for example, this past year, the state didn't pass a capital budget, and so those funds were held up. And we have enough to continue for a while, but finding ongoing capitalization sources is still a challenge. And then when you use a mix of state and federal and local funding sources, there are a number of requirements that are put on that money, whether it has to do with making sure that we are compliant with cultural resources requirements to other things. It's a lot that a typical lender wouldn't normally be interested in doing. And then people are very sensitive about their personal information and their privacy, and they don't necessarily want information going to the government that they've applied for a septic repair and replacement loan. Neighbors could be pretty contentious about this topic, and so making sure that we keep information private that needs to stay private when you're emailing back and forth with public agencies has been an interesting challenge for us. And just managing any program that involves upwards of 15 counties with all their various staff changes and funding changes is work. So I'll talk a little bit about our loan product specifically that we use to deliver the loans in, and actually we serve Oregon too, but we'll also talk about how we do this, about the Washington side of this. So the loan covers the full cost of designing, permitting, installing, and maintaining the septic system. We serve residential and commercial properties, including non-owner occupied, so secondary homes and vacation homes and other kinds of homes, and that is because it doesn't matter, the water quality issues persist regardless of the ownership structure. And because this has a water quality priority, we want to make sure to be serving all those property types. We offer decent rates, there's no upfront cost, and the loan is highly inclusive for a range of property types and incomes. And we're not exclusively serving lower incomes or hard to reach, but we want to make sure that this loan can capture everybody that needs one. And they could finance a sewer connection when the health agency has approved it. And the reserve is available. There's a reserve available for ongoing inspections and repairs after they close their loan. And I want to make clear, because for Clean Water SRF prohibits the use of these funds for maintenance. So it's not for those maintenance kind of activities. It's for inspections, repairs, things that they are needed. And then sometimes Craft3 can use different capital sources when other kinds of maintenance are necessary. So this next slide shows you the rates and terms and interest rates. And the key points here are that based on income, the property owner is eligible for different levels of reduced interest rates or different payment types. If they earn between $35,000 and $55,000 a year, they're eligible for interest-only payments and a rate of 3.99%. And then if they earn below $35,000 a year, they're eligible to make no monthly payments until the loan matures, or and an interest rate of 1.99%. All of these loans are due on sale if there's a sale or property transfer. And any secondary properties or people earning over $55,000 a year pay fully amortizing interest and principal payments on a monthly basis. And the other thing to note is that we designed this roughly to reflect 60, 80, and 100% of state median income when we designed this a couple years ago. And we've kept this income gradation the same over time. it's been working out very well, and so we're keeping it that way for the foreseeable future. We might reevaluate it in a couple of years when things change. I included a slide of some very detailed eligibility and project guidelines that I'm not going to go into in all this detail, but I think the highlights are that the septic system has to be failing. We can't finance with this capital source people who just feel like replacing a perfectly functional septic system. And there are some categories here that indicate that it's failing. The construction company must be on an approved health agency list, and we only fund fully permitted projects. There's no bootleg systems and no temporary or no DIY systems for this. We need everything to be completely done by the licensed folks that are licensed to do that work in that location, and make sure that everything is properly permitted and then approved before we could do our final disbursement. We allow minor expansions, 1 bedroom or 25% for commercial properties, to bring it up to code, but it's not to knock down a small shack and then put in a mansion. That is a different purpose and a different funding source. The other thing is that we need all the sign-offs on the final project before we could disperse the funds, so that everything is completely approved before we do our final funding. And then, the final thing is that we don't do temporary fixes like terra lifting or drain field restoration. This work needs to be not guaranteed, but it needs to be intended to stay in effect for quite a while, and those are not proven to do that. And we don't want to give someone a $5,000 loan and only for them to come back and then need another $35,000 the next year. And I'll turn it over to Gary now to give some perspective from a local health department that's been doing this work for quite some time, and then I'll take it back over from him when he's done.
All right. Thank you, Desiree. So when we started working on the Clean Water Loan Program, we found it very important to loop in the septic industry from the beginning. We knew they see the many septic system failures and communicate with the homeowners first. So we had Craft3 present at a couple of our industry meetings where we got a number of industry professionals in one room, and that was really helpful because Craft3 staff explained the loan program, answered their questions that came up. So it was a good conversation and a good learning experience for everyone. Craft3 has also participated in the annual Washington Onsite Sewage Association conference at least a couple times now, and that's been really helpful so that industry understands what the program is all about. Something we did on our part was get the word out to our health department staff, especially our code enforcement folks. They're one of the first folks out in the field when they're investigating septic system failure, so that they can provide loan options to the worried homeowners immediately, because many times the homeowner's kind of in shock when they realize that this is happening to them. Let me change the slide here. So developing and implementing good communication to the property owners in different ways was critical to the success of this, success and participation in this loan program. We worked with Craft3 to develop and distribute news releases to share to the program information. Craft3 developed and purchased ads in local newspapers, which was very helpful, and we provide loan information options on our health department website for public in our industry to look at, and industry many times shares that information with some of their customers. I periodically check in with industry to get their feedback on how the loan program is going, and what I hear is that they really like working with Craft3. Craft3's straightforward approach is very much appreciated, and the helpful staff that Craft3 has was also mentioned as a plus. We did find that working within a loan program means that all the professionals have to kind of do their job to keep the project moving. And so one of the critical things that we have experienced is having good communication between Craft3 and the health department staff. It's very important so that all the parties know where the repair application process is at any certain time. As Jeff mentioned earlier, Pierce County has a septic repair loan program through Pierce County Surface Water Management. However, there were limits on who can get a loan. Loans were granted only to properties in unincorporated Pierce County, and the failure of a septic system had to impact either a surface water body or a storm system. So the great thing about this new Craft3 regional loan approach is it allows the funding and help for more property owners in our entire county, and of course in the region too, to get their septic system repaired. We see this as a win for both the property owners and the local health agencies, telling the property owner they need to get their system fixed. And so I guess in summary, from the local health perspective, Craft3 does the heavy lifting in reviewing the financials and providing loans if they can. Our job is to get the loan information options to the homeowner that need it and make sure that we review their septic repair applications as efficiently as possible. And I'll turn it back over to Desiree.
Thanks, Gary. And this next slide is a summary of all the lending that we've done from the start of the regional program through the end of September. And what we're seeing is significantly more lending activity in a number of these counties than were being served by their local loan programs prior to Craft3 being involved. And either it's because the process is more simple for the contractors. We disperse directly to the contractors, and a lot of them get paid a lot more quickly and more reliably than they had otherwise been getting paid, so they like that. I know Island County is one of those examples. And in some places, they just weren't even able to start a program. In other places, our credit approval is more flexible than what the counties had previously allowed them to do, and so we can serve a lot more people that have more risky credit than otherwise. And I'll answer a couple of the questions that I'm seeing here in terms of the roles and responsibilities, and a couple of things that I noticed that I'll add to the slides later is that as part of Craft3's lending roles and responsibilities is that we've also agreed to accept the risk of these loans. So we have, as a company, we have a loan loss reserve that we maintain as part of GAAP practices, and we have some old grants that we received in the form of loan loss reserve. So we use that as a credit support for these loans that enable us to offer more flexible credit than a normal lender would be able to do. And so as part of the agreement that we have with Ecology, Craft3 accepts that risk. So any loans default, that's on Craft3 to manage, and then there's no repercussions to Ecology. We still owe that money back to Ecology one way or the other. Our historic default rate, particularly considering the high risk of a lot of these loans, is very low. For a while, our rolling 3-year loss rate was in the 5 to 6% range, and that was capturing the economic recession. And now that a lot of those loans are out of the system, our rolling 3-year loss rate is down to about 2%. So those are figures that are in line with what a normal bank would be looking at as their typical average loss rates, except that our portfolio is significantly more risky than what a normal bank would be looking at. The other questions that I saw that I could just offer answers to real quick is that we don't require the contractor provide a warranty, although I think many of them do for some period of time for certain things. There is an element of homeowner best practice and homeowner maintenance that's required for any septic system. And what we do is we do require, as part of the loan documentation, that the homeowner it keeps up with their required operations and maintenance as is determined by their design of their system. You know, some require annual, some require every 3 years, and then each county has a different requirement too. Usually it's at least 3 to 5 years, depending on the system, if not more quick. So we require that they do that they fulfill those requirements. And actually not doing that work is technically a condition of default. Even though we're not going to default someone on their loan for that, we're going to figure out what's going on and try to help. We have some ways to track those, and the counties have some ways to track that. Tracking operations and maintenance is its own rabbit hole of an issue and a challenge for most counties. And so we are working on some new processes with them to track that of our borrowers and to help ensure they are into compliance. Because them being compliant with their regular scheduled operations and maintenance means that asset is going to be valuable for a longer period of time, which is good for the homeowner and also good for our loan. And so we do have a lien on the property. The loan is structured with a UCC filing, so we do not do a deed of trust. And that is for a number of reasons, one of which is that the process to do a deed of trust is much more involved from a lender's perspective. It enters us into a very expensive and extensive range of regulatory compliance. And our research found that it didn't help us too much in terms of what we would actually have available to us as for the property if a loan did go through the default process. And so we instead do a UCC 1A filing, which is a fixture filing, and it enables us to avoid all of the federal RESPA requirements of mortgage lending, and we are able to just do everything a lot more quickly, and we still have some ability to get some funding back if a loan defaults. We usually will go second on a mortgage, or we'll be in third or fourth position. Sometimes we don't have a lot of requirements there. It's part of the overall credit review process. Depending on their overall situation, we're willing to be pretty flexible. And so I can pause here, and maybe we could open it up for any further comments by Gary or Jeff, or we could open up for verbal questions.
Desiree, this is Gary. I see there was a question about what a failing system is defined as.
Yeah, we have that. Do you want to go through that, Gary, from the health department's perspective?
Sure. I mean, there's the state definition of a failing septic system, the local health jurisdiction's definition. But in general, normally what we see as failing is the system's no longer functioning as it was intended, and many times that means the system is either got surfacing sewage in the drain field or there's backup into the house, one of those things. And normally people don't just jump to a repair immediately. They try to do maintenance and try to have the septic professionals work on the systems a little bit to see if they can get life back into it. So many times that's all done, and then the determination is this system can't be fixed simplistically, so that's where the repair or replacement of the system occurs.
And we can finance a repair as well if that's the issue that the household needs. We tend not to do loans less than about $2,500. It just doesn't make sense for the borrower. But we've done, on a rare occasion, ones where there's a conservation district giving a grant for 3/4 of the cost of the system, and then we came in with the gap there, and it was a woman, a retired woman who had no access to any capital, and so we did a tiny loan for her, but that's usually more of an exception than a rule.
Yeah, we had a question come in via text, and again, I apologize for my voice. I have a cold. So, um, have you ever had a situation where you funded a new system and a repair or a replacement only to have it fail again within a very short space of time?
So I recall a conversation about this happening once, uh, a couple of years ago, and I believe it needed a repair, not a full replacement again. It doesn't happen very frequently. But that said, one of the real benefits of this program is we've been able to take this model and expand it to the state of Oregon, and we've been lending statewide for the last year. And one of the things we heard from contractors there is that they see all the time where people fix their systems and then they fail in 5 years because they didn't have enough money to cover operations or maintenance or annual repairs or inspections. So we know it's an issue out in the community. We just haven't seen it happen much with our loans because of that reserve. No. And so the answer is our prices for our systems higher than the outside programs. And if you look at this, the average loan amount looks pretty high. And I have a couple of theories as to what's going on here. One of them is that when we added all these new counties, a lot of them are in urban areas where the cost of doing all this work is higher. It includes a number of islands that have an added cost of transportation of materials and things on ferries, etc. So that increases the price, or the average price. And we have a lot of areas abutting really sensitive watersheds and shellfish growing areas and shoreline properties and things that require a lot more advanced treatment systems. So you're going to see higher prices there as well. And I think especially lately with real estate and other economic activity going fairly well in the states of Oregon and Washington for some people, my guess is that the smaller dollar repairs, like the $8,000 repairs, are getting covered mostly through other means. And what we're seeing is when people have significant costs that they cannot otherwise cover, and so then they're coming to Craft3. And so we're getting a lion's share of the real expensive, complicated projects that don't have any other ways to be funded. So our expectation is that the average cost is going to be a lot less than the people that definitely need loans, but that we look at hundreds of these a year, and these don't seem overinflated for the average industry pricing.
So I believe I did hear you answer this question that came in via text, that you don't restrict your loans to conventional septic systems, that you will fund a system that will treat to the standard of the site that needs it.
Craft3 stays out of, just like the water quality experts are not lending experts, we are not water quality experts. We let the county health departments and their designers and contractors make decisions as to what's best with that property. And we go by we will finance the project, but it is their joint decision as to what kind of system they need and what they need to do at the site.
So what advice would you give for anyone who's listening to this about how to replicate what you're doing in their state or their region?
I will give you my advice, and then I'll let Jeff and Gary give their advice as well. I have a couple of lasting things. So one finding that we've had is that when the geography is restricted to a location that's smaller than a county, it's really hard to do. You have to do extra outreach extra work to target a small number, because we've had certain loan funding sources that are only for like a one shellfish protection district or one drainage basin. And those are particularly hard to make an impact on. So my advice is that even if you're targeting a very specific location with your outreach and with who you want to serve, the larger the geography, the better. It's easier to go statewide. It's easier to go countywide. And just because someone's not on a particular drainage doesn't mean that a failing system is not a public health hazard, a groundwater hazard, or another hazard, even if it's harder to measure. So having this resource more broadly available is quite helpful and has been impactful. So that's one best practice I'd suggest. And I guess I would say to take a lot of lessons learned from this group that's gone through kind of every iteration of a program and every step in the process, and try to skip over the pieces that might not be applicable, and think bigger picture about the need. Would be another piece of advice that I would have for this. Always, it's great to look to see who you have in your communities that are their CDFIs, community development financial institution lenders, in across the country. We all do various things, so you might have one locally that you could work with, and there's likely a lot of partner groups that are not the typical public health agencies that are also serving similar populations. And so partnering can bring more resources to the table and different kind of resources to the table. So it's always a good conversation to have.
This is Jeff, too. I will add that, every state has a Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. They're all, this would be eligible. Setting up a local loan program would be eligible if there wasn't an active entity like Craft3 or a CDFI that was willing to jump in. I mean, starting where we did with at least offering a local loan program options is a possibility. And then in our case, having a really active CDFI and Craft3 has made a huge difference and made this actually possible for us. We didn't get as much interest from banks around the state to jump into this, although other states have set up opportunities for this type of thing with more traditional banking institutions, but without the broad range of options for loans that Craft3 is able to offer. And that's why this has been successful, is this partnership and the Craft3 mission objective in delving into this, and some state grant money. I think without grant money, you can't really capitalize a program that can operate long term. So a combination of grant and loan funds, I think, has made a difference for Washington State in this realm.
This is Gary from the local health perspective. I think I would tell other people, have conversations with your adjacent counties, have conversations with the state agencies that are involved with this, because as the local health department, we communicate regularly with our Department of Health, which is a state agency, and Department of Ecology. So just have those conversations and see if it could very well be that some of those other agencies, state and local, have some idea of, and maybe they're doing something similar to this that you're not aware of. So just open the line of communication. That's all I can say.
Okay, I see one last question here from Ibahar. Hi there. Ibahar is from the Florida Department of Health, so our thoughts are with you, obviously. He wants to know how you actually capitalize the original sum. What happens How long do you have to wait for your loans to start generating a revolving income?
So that's a great question, and that is why starting this out with, well, we need grant and loan money as a combination to be able to make this work. We can't, it's easier for us in Washington State to access more clean water SRF funds than it is grant dollars, but we can only borrow so much in a ratio with our grant dollars. And so we have pulled together a loan fund that enables us to have some loans that don't repay for 15 years. And even for those loans, if at the 15-year point when that loan becomes due, we're able to extend it another 5 years and potentially even longer if everything is, the credit is still good with that property. So we don't intend to, saddle a retired couple that has no income with a $30,000 payment at the end of that if they can't pay for it. So we have ways to extend that loan if we need to. And we've been doing this for a long time. We got our first grant from Ecology in 2007, and that money is still revolving. And we work with other financial entities to pull in other capital sources. So it's really about being creative and scrappy and having great partnerships to be able to pull the right sources together to make this last.
And one question that came in via text as well, and I'm not sure that this applies to the state of Washington, Oregon, but in some states, part of the Constitution is that you are not allowed to use public funds for private purposes. How did that impact you, or is that just not part of the equation there?
Jeff, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one because I spent a lot of time with our Attorney General for Ecology on this issue. But that one's actually pretty straightforward for us. There's already a opinion from our state Attorney General on the issue of granting money that results in a broader public benefit. So essentially, if we're providing funds on a private property, but the intent is to protect the public interest, public health, and the environment, our AAG says, that's totally fine. If, as long as that element is there, and that's why, addressing, is the septic system failing and causing a public health and or environmental impact, then use of state resources to address an issue on private property is okay. We use the same opinion when we fund installing agricultural best management practices on private property around the state, doing riparian restoration, riparian protection, exclusion fencing, and other agricultural best management practices. And other agencies do the same. So it's that opinion from the Attorney General that allows us to use those dollars on private property.
And the person who texted that question is there any way to get a hold of a copy of that opinion? Is it available online?
It's not available online. I know I have it, and I refer to it periodically, but it hasn't been for a while. But I'll double check to see if I can find that.
Okay, well, great.
Provide it.
Okay, Carl, we have not heard from you so far. I wonder if you'd like to close out the afternoon and if there are any additional comments you wanted to make.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for joining. We had 3 great policy experts here that I didn't feel like I needed to jump in on top of. They know the program certainly far better than me. But we all are available for questions and follow-up. Our emails are listed on here. when this started 12 years ago in Pacific County, I don't think Craft3 had any idea that it would become what it has become. And I don't even think we really touched on it too much, but we've since taken this regional loan program and the product that we built with it and expanded it statewide to Oregon, which Desiree may have touched on. And so this is a really scalable solution that I don't think anyone anticipated would be as successful as it has been. And so, we're more than happy to entertain questions on how we got it to that point and the partnership that required, and how we capitalized, and how we've been able to deploy it. And we found it to be a really great resource that builds regional resilience, which is in line with Craft3's mission. So I guess I'll just say thank you to Dendra for hosting, and to Gary and Jeff for joining, and Des, I'll see you back in the office. And thank you all for learning a little bit about Craft3 and the program.
Thank you. And there was one question that came in asking if they could get a copy of the presentation. And as a follow-up for this, you will receive the link for the recording, which you are more than welcome to share. We will include everyone's contact information again, and a link to where you can download the actual PowerPoint presentation. Are there any final questions before we close out for the day? I'm not seeing anyone. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close the recording, and thank you so much for attending today.